Girls, hope everyone's had a great weekend. Tonight's topic, I've got a very special guest with us tonight. Justin Nickerson is the ultimate guide to auctions, and very lucky to have Justin along tonight. Thanks, mate.
Mate, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So, guys, very, very special guest. Just to let you know, Justin, I'm rattling off his awards here, and I was reading through them before we started. 2013, 2016, 2017 REIQ Auctioneer of the Year. 2016, Justin was the Australasian Auctioneer of the Year. So great we beat New Zealand in something. He's been auctioneering for 7 years and had his own business, which is Apollo Auctions, and he's had that for 4 years, since 2013. So you can check his website out, which is apolloauctions.com.au. So guys, look, we've had a few questions come through during the week since we promoted this. And it's been, you know, an area where I get a lot of people asking questions. So I thought I'd get the best in the business to come along and give his thoughts on some of the questions that are coming through. Feel free to ask more questions as it is live tonight. If we don't get back to all the questions, Justin and I will get back to them at some stage, you know, after tonight's live feed. But keep them coming. If you do like this that you see tonight, please give it the thumbs up. Share it. Feel free to share it. And also, if you have a friend that is maybe going to auction or looking to buy at auction, or when they go looking to auction is go to sell at auction or looking to buy at auction, feel free to share or tag them in the post as well. So we'll start off with some of the questions that came through during the week.
So we had a question come through from Brendan. I'm thinking of selling my house. Why is auction the best method?
Well, I think if you're looking at selling at auction, auction gives you an opportunity to get the buyers emotionally connected to the home. And I think that's the most important thing. We always say there's two real key ingredients to getting the best price. One is emotional buyer, but the second one is placing them in a situation where the home might potentially get taken away from them. So that emotional buy in a competitive environment is really what auction is built around. The other side to that too is it does give you a few different opportunities to sell your property. You've got pre-auction, which is for your buyer that might have missed out before, doesn't want to compete. On the day, which is your traditional, block type of auction with competition, and then post-auction, anyone that might be sweating or waiting or doesn't have their ducks in a row financially to get them involved. So it does give you those different opportunities, and also, as we mentioned, it does allow the buyer to get emotionally attached to the home.
Fantastic.
Next question is from Simon. We have a property that we are looking that is going to auction this weekend. What is your best bidding strategy?
Oh, one we get asked often enough, and yeah, we get asked about bidding strategies. I know I gave my thoughts, but I'd love to hear Justin's thoughts. And how many auctions have you called, mate? Roughly
across my career, it'd be probably a couple of thousand, I'd say. The first thing I'd say is, look, don't be overawed by the moment. We find that a lot of buyers, they're really hungry for the property pre-auction. They do their building and pest, and they do their valuations, and they go through the home 4 times, and they bring their cousins and their uncles and their friends, and they turn up on auction day and they just don't bid. They feel like the best way to secure the home is just to sit there with the paddle by the side. So the first thing is, if you can step out of that comfort zone and put your paddle in the air, you automatically take confidence away from the other people who are there at the auction. So that's a really important step. When it gets to more advanced bidding strategy, look, if it was me buying, I'd be bidding really quickly, because I think the quicker you bid, the more it puts pressure on the other bidders. And ultimately on auction day, you don't need to beat the seller, you don't need to beat the agent or the auctioneer, you just need to beat the other bidders. So bidding quickly, putting the pressure back on the other bidders. It doesn't have to be big jumps, but even small jumps. We had a buyer today that employed this strategy, and you just see that every time that decision passed across to another buyer, the shoulders slump, and then all of a sudden they feel like they're constantly under pressure all the time.
So it's basically that every time a punch gets thrown, another jab.
Yeah, and think about, if you're there and you've got the bid and someone else is making a decision, you can generally forecast what they're going to bid. If the auctioneer is asking for $5,000, they're either going to say yes and bid $5,000 or not bid at all. So you almost want to have the conversation while that's occurring to say, okay, if they go $5,000, are we ready to go again? And as soon as they bid, bang, you bid, and then all of a sudden the pressure keeps heaping on that other person who's the ones you want to intimidate on the day.
I've given people advice, Justin. It's almost like a mind game, isn't it? It's like a game of chess, really.
Absolutely. Yep.
So yeah.
Public chess, yeah.
Public chess, that's great. Great.
So
Next question.
Next question's from Tim.
Hi Tim, how are you?
What if I take my property to auction and it doesn't sell?
Well, this happens. Believe it or not,
does
Ben,
happen.
this happened to us a couple of weeks ago. Look, I guess the first thing is it's not all toys out of the cot. You're going to feel slightly deflated when it doesn't sell because naturally you gear yourself to sell on auction day. But like we mentioned about those 3 stages to it, that third stage is not a myth. It's very much sometimes the path that it does go. And in the marketplace we've got at the moment, you know, sometimes more often than not, that's what you do find yourself heading towards. But the good thing about that is it does open it up to a range of buyers that may not have seen it before because they are waiting for that price to go on it. So if the property doesn't sell at auction, Tim, that's okay. That happens from time to time. The important thing is to listen to the marketing agent as to what their feedback have been. Someone like Ben will give you pretty direct and honest feedback as to where the marketplace is seeing it. And if you listen to that feedback and price the home accordingly, well, there's not too much that can go wrong from there. It's just a matter of finding that right buyer from that position.
It pretty much falls into line, doesn't it? That, you know, it falls within that, you know, that average time on market, really, doesn't it, Justin? So,
Absolutely.
you know, realistically, you know, if it doesn't sell prior to on the day, usually we get a result, as you've noticed, in the next week or two, so
Yeah.
which has happened.
I think that 10 to 14 day period post-auction is a really crucial one.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be hanging out there forever, but you certainly want to give those buyers that may be waiting that chance to get on in, get involved.
And it certainly gives confidence to the owner to know where the market's sitting as well.
Spot on.
Yep.
Spot on.
All right, next question's from Marie, which could be either for an auctioneer or an agent. What are the associated costs with an auction?
I'll probably answer that one. Yeah, well, look, the associated, it depends on the property and, you know, where you're marketing and what sort of price range. So realistically, I get asked this a lot because a lot of people associated auction properties with large print campaigns. Probably when you started too, Justin, probably large print campaigns. But the associated cost, Marie, I can let you know, realistically, is just this great gentleman's fee here, realistically. So
Cheap.
whatever, yeah,
Real cheap.
it's cheap. So whatever it is, so you know, around that sort of $700 mark. So is the added on. So you'd market the property, you'd spend the same amount on your photos, your floor plan, your internet marketing, and if you do go to print, the only difference would be the auctioneer's fees, which is well worth it. So it's a small, small fee to pay realistically. So it's not that much of a difference between a normal campaign and auctioneering.
Okay, next question is from Jason.
Hi Jason, how are you?
You auction all over Australasia. Which is the best auction markets?
I guess we would take best auction market as to be where the most buyer activity is.
Yep.
Look, I think any of the inner city prestige markets, which is inner city Sydney, inner city Melbourne, and look, inner city Auckland from the last couple of years has been an incredibly strong market as well. Generally what you find is the CBD market itself isn't usually that strong because there's a glut of units in that. But that next ring out, which is kind of your blue chip thing, which is anything from sort of your 2 to 5 kilometres from the CBD, that's usually your most strongest markets or the strongest markets because most commonly that's where people want to live, that's where your trendy cafes are, that's where your really good schooling belt commonly is as well. So that's where you tend to find the most buyer activity. So the long answer to a short question, I'd probably say inner city Sydney, inner city Melbourne at the moment.
And even Brisbane to the extent you're saying. So anywhere, so further out, so answering that further out, you'd maybe question auctioning, Justin, and also I gather what you're saying with you mentioned units. You don't see too many units, or you wouldn't recommend inner city unit.
I'm probably a bit biased, Ben.
Yeah, I know.
I think all properties should go to auction. I think all vendors should. I think the auction, and this is a long training session, but I think auction has a different application in those markets. In those markets, it's a way of not making a pricing mistake.
Yep.
Not committing to a high price and having the property sit there for a long time or underselling the property. In the prestige markets, it is a vehicle for creating competition. So they're different applications.
Yep. No, they can work all.
All right, we've just had a question come through from Pat Ivy. So it's 2 questions in one.
Hi Pat, how are you this evening?
Is it best to pass in on a live bid or a vendor bid? What if the live bid stops well below market?
Well, that's a good question, Pat. You're obviously a keen student of auctioneering. Look, I think this is a sort of horses for courses response. Ideally, you want to be passing on a live bid because you want people to be walking away seeing the last bid was placed out of someone there who is their competition post-auction. In saying that, the application of a vendor bid to leave proceedings can be quite beneficial if you are a long way from the likely selling zone. So say, for example, Ben has a property in Red Hill or in Paddington. The bidding doesn't reach the levels that they're anticipating for whatever reason, but Ben's very confident post-auction interest levels are higher. Placing the vendor bid at that higher level can quite often be a platform for you to then have the conversation and say, look, it got passed in at X, we're clearly looking to negotiate above that, rather than having to have that conversation and saying, well, it got passed in down here, but we are looking a fair way higher than that. Thanks for your question, Pat.
Okay, we have another good question that's come through from 153 Media Co. What technology do you think could shake up the auction industry over the next few years? Virtual auctions or Facebook Live?
Oh, that's a really good question. Virtual auctions, but this has been sort of thrown out there a couple of times about whether this is a good path to go. I still think that the presence of having virtual auctions and someone sitting behind a computer screen, you'll never get the same emotional engagement as you will with them physically standing in the crowd and seeing their competition immediately in front of them. In saying that, opening up that window for people that can't attend and bid over the phone is a better step than them simply bidding on the phone. Being able to see what's happening and being able to sort of witness firsthand what they need to do to secure the home is a good thing. You're seeing now the advent of Facebook Live really taking off with live auctions. You know, we've done a couple of them.
We've done a few.
You log on to Saturday on your Facebook feed and it's just full of live auctions, which presents a couple of interesting things. Firstly, it does give you the platform to showcase your business to a greater audience. We were actually chatting before about the, on an auction related note, about the Nudgy Terrace.
Nudgy Terrace, which Nudgy won. Justin and I are both Nudgy old boys, so...
Yeah. Ben's doing a war cry at the end, which is incredibly exciting.
Apparently I'm meant to be doing a war cry at the end, but we're both proud Nudgy old boys, and we're mentioning that Justin was tied up with auctions yesterday and I was at Opens, and we were both watching a bit of the game in between open houses on Facebook Live.
Yep. And that's technology. You know, when you finished, mate, in 1983, you know, you wouldn't even thought about it.
No,
you could broadcast the game anywhere.
Playing with Commodore 64.
That's right, exactly. But now that's away. So I think that application of opening the window to not just the people who are there literally watching the auction to a wider audience online is definitely where it's going to go in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and just adding to that, I think, you know, as Justin mentioned, as Nico said, having those, Facebook Live, look, I get comments all the time, you know, people saying that, look, Ben, I was up at the beach and, you know, we live in the same street and, you know, saw that great result that you guys did on the weekend. So it does, you know, allow people to keep in touch with the market. So, you know, as some people aren't around on weekends and mightn't be able to go to that auction in their street, they'll still be able to keep an eye on it and watch the live bidding from, you know, this gentleman was sitting up at Noosa on the beach watching one of our auctions.
Good way to go.
Yeah, I wish we were there.
Yeah, you and I both.
Next question is from Emily. What's the most amount of money you have achieved over reserve?
Oh, gee, Emily, you're going to really make me cast my mind back here. There was a property we sold down on Hedges Avenue on the Gold Coast a few years ago now, actually. It wasn't that recent. And that one sold just over $1 million above reserve.
Wow.
So that's probably the high marker that I've got in my mind, although there was another one actually at the start of this year, a commercial property that was the same, 1.5 million above reserve, which is interesting sometimes because I'm not a fan of advertising how much over reserve things sell.
Yeah.
We're very quick to take responsibility when the market, we get a really good result, yet when we sell underneath reserve, we don't want to know about it. So I think as long as you get a good result above the seller's expectations, then that's what you should be advertising, not necessarily the figure itself, because it does open the door for people to say, well, clearly the reserve was set inaccurately when it's a market, so it's hard to predict.
Because we do get, I mean, it might be a bit controversial, but you see those shows like The Block, and they do come on and, you know, you see these people make, you know, 700, 800,000, $1 million, you know, whatever it is, you know, I don't know what, I don't watch the show that often, but, you know, every time after that you probably see an influx of people A, doing renovations to their house, and B, auctioning them, because there is that false sense of market and saying, well, geez, if they can do it, we can do it. Whereas, as Nico's saying, basically, you know, it's good on TV and it's good for TV, but in theory, does it happen? Not too often.
I think the worst weekend of the year to do auctions is the one after The Block, because you turn up and they're wondering where Scott Cam is, where the cameras are getting.
Where the cameras and why isn't there 50 bidders there and all that sort of things. So yeah,
exactly.
Yep. So look, guys, thanks very much. And look, those questions that Sam read out tonight did come through, and have been, you know, some of them have been asked in previous weeks. So feel free to contact myself or Justin if you've got any further questions. And look, guys, you know, thanks very much for joining us tonight. And I really want to thank Justin, Nico.
Thank you.
And I'll leave that nudgy war cry for another time. Thanks very much for him joining, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.